WZWA Sports. It's in the game.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the WZWA Network. You're with the head of the sports division, Hogsley. Today, we are looking at UFC 286. Now, I'm not going to do the Bruce Buffer impression again. It's a bit silly. Let's just move on with things here today because I'm too bloody hyped about what I've just seen. That was an absolute cracker of a card, everyone. This is what I wanted to see from UFC 285. This had it all. This was just a barn burner from start to finish. So we will touch on only the main card today. I did skip the prelims this time around because last time they were shit. And I didn't want to waste my time with them again. Although apparently there were some good fights, so maybe I'll go back and check them out at a later date. So we'll touch on all 5 fights. We'll touch on oh man, I'm going to say so many of these names wrong, as I always do. The dollar. Straight off the bat, I'm struggling. Roman Dollar right? Versus Marvin Vettori. We'll touch on that one. We'll touch on Casey O'Neill versus Jennifer Maia, which, in my opinion, man, these women fighters, they are giving us a show every time I've seen them. They are giving us some of the best performances in the UFC right now. We'll touch on the Barberena versus Nelson fight. You know, another good fight. We'll get all to all the good stuff. We'll touch on the physique. There we are. The physique versus Gaethje fight. Man, I can't wait to crack into that one. What a great fight. And obviously we'll touch on the reason we're all here, the rubber match between Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman. But we'll do it chronologically, as we always do. And we'll start with I don't want to keep saying his name. I'm trying to, it's right here in front of me and I still can't read it. Dollar-Zivi, I'm going to call him Roman. Roman versus Marvin Vettori. I'm really sorry. I struggle with names at times. Okay, I apologize. But that was the way we kicked things off tonight. And what a way to kick off UFC 286. This is what I want to see from the UFC. Now, it's not like they're the most technical fighters or have the best defense, but I know the UFC's got your wrestling, it's got your jiu-jitsu and all that good shit. But I mean, I'm a boxing boy. I want to see some boxing, and I love the fact that most of these fights were fought on your feet. And this one, I think it only had one attempted takedown, and it was smothered. So I loved it. It was great from the get-go. So let me tell you why I thought it was great. So you had Vettori. Okay. Now, I haven't watched a lot of his fights. In fact, I think this is the first time I've ever seen Vettori. But I will go based on what the commentators said. They were talking about how he went to Thailand to learn how to throw leg kicks or just kicks in general. Obviously, Thailand's got a lot of kickboxing, Muay Thai, you know, all that good shit as well. So obviously they know what they're doing when it comes to kicks. And you could clearly see Vettori had picked up a lot from his time there because from the get-go, from the start of the round, he was throwing these kicks out with really good success. Okay, he wasn't really twisting his hips into it. They were kind of just slapping little kicks here and there, but they're still a scoring kick, and they will obviously have an effect on Roman. But what this fight really came down to, it was the overhand right from Roman against the counter right hook, the lead right hook from Vettori, because Vettori fights out of the southpaw stance. Now, at the end of round 1, Roman, I gave the first round to Roman, okay? His overhand right was connecting clean time and time again. And I didn't know what Vettori was doing. he kept circling into it. Don't circle to your left against an orthodox fighter throwing his power punches. But that's what Vettori kept doing towards the end of round one. And he got clipped a few times in the fight. Okay? You always want to circle to the lead hand of a fighter. Okay? Because that's their presumably weaker punch. But he was either walking back or he was circling to his left, and he got getting clipped by this overhand right. And I thought, maybe, what is he doing basically? What is Vettori doing in this fight? Because other than that, I don't know what else he was doing to win that round. So I gave the first round to Roman. Okay? But he must have had some advice in the corner. He must have realized what he was doing. But from that point on, I gave every other round to Vettori in this fight, okay? He clearly adjusted, and he was landing these counter lead right hooks time and time again against Roman. Now, I will give credit to Roman. I love when a fighter does what he was doing. He was pumping out the chest. He was like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, come here. Bring it on. That's great. Love all of that, okay? Because, even if it does hurt you, that's mind games, everyone. So playing the mind games, saying that your punches don't hurt me, but also just being a warrior in the ring. And I think that was a common theme throughout all the fights tonight. These were a bunch of warriors giving it their all. This was a cracker of a fight. It was back and forth. It was very close at times. Like I said, I gave the first round to Roman. I gave the following 2 rounds to Vettori. But these weren't just dominating rounds by either fighter. These were very close rounds. So what a way to start off UFC 286. So we won't stay too long on this fight. It's the first fight of the pay-per-view. But like I said, it was just a great way to start off the rest of this card. So we'll move on. We'll move on to the second fight of the night, and that was Casey O'Neill versus Jennifer Maia. Now, I said earlier, I'm a boxing boy. Okay, I love boxing. So as soon as I was watching round one of this fight, I was like, this is what I want to see. Jennifer Maia has got some serious boxing skills, especially in the UFC, okay? That was one of my problems with the first fight, Vettori versus Roman, okay? Because I won't try and say it again. So many UFC fighters, and I've commented on this before, will throw a punch and not return their hand to their chin. That drives me absolutely wild, okay? You're just leaving yourself open to be countered every time. When you throw a punch, that punch should come back. It shouldn't go back down to your hips. Now, I know there's different fighting styles in the UFC. You've got, we'll touch on this in the Gunnar Nelson fight, who, as the commentator said, used a karate stance where your hands are down by your knees. That may be fine for Gunnar Nelson, but it still drives me up the wall when I see people throwing out a punch and not bringing the punch back to their chin, okay? But I didn't have to worry about that at all with Jennifer Maia. She has some serious boxing skills here. That was a great stand-up game from Jennifer Maia. And once again, much like I love to see, okay, there was absolutely zero groundwork. This was all a stand-up game, and I was loving it, okay? Maia had the head movement, the footwork. She was throwing the combos. She was mixing kicks into the combos. That was, like I've said before, that requires a good amount of footwork and a good amount of balance. You need to be having a firm base and foundation from your punches to transition into a kick. So I was absolutely loving the performance she gave here tonight. Okay, but not to totally write off Casey O'Neill. I think I did give every round to Maia. I was just loving what she did tonight. O'Neill was landing punches here and there throughout the fight. But the better punches and the consistency of punches were coming from Maia. For every one punch O'Neal landed, there was about 3 or 4 coming back from Maia, which wins the exchange every single time. Now, these weren't dominating rounds, but once again, these were just two warriors going at it. So, some people might see these as close rounds, but just what Maia was able to do in her stand-up game was enough for me to just give her each round. But what is interesting, though, despite me praising the absolute shit out of what Maia was able to do in the stand-up game, and this may come off as praise as well, especially from a boxing standpoint, she was boxing on the move. You don't really see that a lot with current boxers. They sit down on their punches. It's not like Sugar Ray Leonard back in the day. He boxed on the move better than anyone. All right, he was able to box going backwards. Okay, but that normally comes when the other person is the stronger fighter, the aggressor, moving forward. And that's what O'Neal was doing. O'Neal was actually cutting off the octagon and walking it down, which you'd think would come from the better striker, which I believe Maia was. But no, it was O'Neal, the one that was walking Maia down for basically all 3 rounds. So the ability to box on the move, which Maia was doing, like I said, I can't really heap more praise onto her. I think that was absolutely incredible boxing skills. I shouldn't say especially from the UFC, but I will, especially from the UFC. UFC is not a boxing event. It's a mixed martial arts event. Okay? But not only was, look, I'm just gonna keep heaping praise on this woman because I do think this is an incredible fight. Maia averaged over 100 strikes per round. And I know it's 5-minute rounds, but that's still what? You got 5 minutes, 20 punches a minute. That's right math, isn't it? To get 100 punches a round. 20 punches a minute, that's what, punch every 3 seconds? That's pretty goddamn good, everyone. You think about how quickly 3 seconds is? Like, my pause just then was probably 3 seconds, and you've just popped off a punch in that time? Now, I don't think every one of these punches was connecting, but the amount of pressure and activity Maia had in this fight was incredible. I actually fully believed she was going to gas herself. She looked too amped up for that fight. I love the head movement. I love her footwork, but she seemed jittery at times. It was just most of the fight. I was not screaming at my TV by any means, but I was like, relax. You're winning the fight. Do what you're doing, mix in the head movement, but don't gas yourself. She didn't. She's obviously got a hell of a tank, a huge amount of cardio, so it didn't cost her. She ends up winning the fight via unanimous decision. Both fighters, though, came away from the fight pretty marked up. You did see a bit of swelling on Maia's face. O'Neal did get the worst of it, though. So once again, I loved it. 2 warriors going at it, not worrying about the ground game at all. Just pure striking affair, which, for my personal taste, is what I want to see. So straight away, back-to-back fights have been amazing. Okay? Then we move on to the meat and potatoes of this entire event. Brian Barberena versus Gunnar Nelson. Now, this is a clash of styles, and this, like I've said before, is what the UFC was built around. Brian Barberena didn't really seem like he had any sort of, well, he's obviously got formal training, but that's not how he fights. He fights as a pure puncher or a striker. Meanwhile, Gunnar Nelson, dude looked like he was straight out of the 1930s as one of those strongmen, or even an old-timey 1800s boxer. He looked like he was about to square up like it was Queensberry rules. That mustache, his whole demeanor, his stance, that was a total throwback for me. And as the commentator said, they said it's a traditional karate stance, but just It looked wild to me. It honestly did. The whole aesthetic of Gunnar Nelson, I was just loving it from the get-go. I also loved how Barberena came out singing on his way to the ring. Now, we've had back-to-back reviews now where the guy who's been singing on the way to the ring loses, and that's what happened to Barberena in this fight. He loses. So maybe it's not a good thing to do, but I'm still going to enjoy every second of it. Have a bit of fun out there, you know? Not every part of life needs to be so serious. And if that's how you help yourself relax and get ready for a fight, great. I love it. I'm all for it. But the fight really didn't go all that long, okay? And I don't actually think Barberena did anything. And now he was also being billed as if he was young Randy Orton, as if he was a legend killer. They were going through his past resume, showing how he had taken out all these vets of the UFC. And Gunnar Nelson was the next on his hit list. That wasn't the case, okay? You could clearly see the inexperience by Barberena when it came to Gunnar Nelson, okay? What do we have here? He had from round one, I can't really remember anything either fighter did up until the double underhook clinch by Gunnar Nelson. And from that moment, you could see the experience Nelson had in the ring. There are a number of ways to fight in any combat sport. But one of the most effective tactics in all of them is to make your opponent uncomfortable. And sometimes that comes with being a little bit dirty, okay? Whether it's leaning on the back of the head in boxing, just being a weight bully. I could really see in this double underhook clinch, he was just pushing Barberena up against the cell, and he kind of just had his head pushing against Barberena's head, and he's sort of just rubbing it back and forth like that. He is trying to make Barberena as uncomfortable as he possibly can in the ring. And you need to do that in combat sports. You need to get your opponent out of their game plan. And a good way to do that is just piss them off, okay? Make them uncomfortable. So I love that. It clearly shows the experience Gunnar Nelson has in the UFC. And from there, he does get the takedown. And basically, that was game over for Barberena, okay? Nelson on the ground is one of the best submission artists the UFC has to offer. Okay, once you're down there, you, as the commentator say, you cannot make a single mistake. Okay, and I don't think Barberena was made a mistake. But what did happen was Gunnar Nelson landed some vicious elbows, and one of these elbows just before the armbar that tapped Barberena, it stunned him, it rocked him. He came down clean with that elbow, and you could see Barberena was shaking off the cobwebs. And in that split couple of seconds, he was shaking off these cobwebs. It was a beautiful transition into the armbar. It was clean. You could see Barberena going, "Oh, Jesus Christ, let me try and stop this." But it was way too late. And with it was at the end of round one. Barberena was close to seeing out this round. They were on the ground. He had like 10 seconds to kill. Just don't fuck up for 10 seconds. He cops his elbow, it moves into the armbar, and he's forced to tap for a round one submission. Gunnar Nelson is our winner. I don't know where either fighter goes from here, but what a great finish. Okay, I've been praising the standing game for the rest of these fights so far, but I'm happy when you go to the ground and that's what happens. What annoys me is when you just lay on each other for 4 minutes and waste our time. I want to see some bloody action. Okay, I'm watching combat sports for a reason. I want to see some ground and pound or some kicks to the face or some hard overhand rights. All submissions. I'm happy to see all that as well. Okay? And I know it's a chess game when you're on the ground, but okay, it's not as entertaining for me to watch. This was still a very, very entertaining fight. even though I do believe it was just dominance by Gunnar Nelson. So I said we've moved on to the meat and potatoes. Well, we just ate our potatoes. Let's move on to the meat, because these last two fights were bangers, everyone. These were the fights you really want to see if you're a UFC fan or a combat sports fan. So the co-main event. Now, a little bit of a spoiler. This was my fight of the night, everyone. This was a cracker from start to finish. You had Fiziev, yeah, versus Justin Gaethje. Now, we've talked about a clash of styles in UFC, but this was a clash of career trajectories, so to speak. Fiziev was the rising star of this division, much like Rakhmonov, another just incredible fighter coming out of Kazakhstan. Okay, Rakhmonov may have a more complete skill set than Fiziev, but the strengths that Fiziev has are leagues above a lot of what I've seen from lots of UFC fighters. His striking speed, you blink and you miss it. Okay, his takedown defense, not that you saw it much tonight, but they said it was like 91% leads the UFC, okay? These two aspects of his skill set, he is absolutely incredible at. But Justin Gaethje, everyone, he's a former world champion for a reason, okay? And you know what beats speed? It's timing. And eventually, Justin Gaethje works out his timing and starts cracking me. I'm getting ahead of myself, as I always do. So let's start with how this played out from round one, okay? I gave the first round to Fiziev, okay? His quick strikes were clearly winning him the round. And I don't think Gaethje knew what to do. In fact, I believe if Gaethje didn't have the kind of chin he does, which has been shown, he would have been knocked out in that first round. Fiziev landed a killer knee to the face. If I or any of you took a knee like that, mate, well, waking up when September ends, okay? But Gaethje's got a hell of a chin. And so he takes these punches, he takes the abuse from Fiziev. And I can't give enough praise to how quick these strikes were coming out. It was incredible. But I will say, there was something that really pissed me off in this fight. And we'll talk about how much this pisses me off even more, because we see it even more in the next event. But there was an eye poke to Fiziev by Justin Gaethje. Okay? Shit happens. But what pisses me off is, I mean, what the fuck? Can you just go to the ref and say, hey, man, give me a break. He poked me in the eye. And the ref's like, oh, yeah, all right then. I'll give you a break. But just fuck off, all right? It's protect yourself at all times for a reason. Unless a ref asks you to break, you fight, okay? I don't like seeing this shit, all right? Don't be looking to the ref to save your ass, okay? I know it was an illegal blow, and even Gaethje had the, he was a big enough man to acknowledge that he had done an illegal eye poke and was like, yeah, I'm not going to attack you while you talk to the ref and try and get a break. But you don't need to do that, Gaethje, okay? Unless the ref has stopped the fight. If he's complaining to the ref, go ahead and kick him in the face, all right? Go ahead and punch him because you're allowed to do it, okay? You should do it as well, all right? Because shit happens in these fights, okay? Whether it be a headbutt or a low blow or an eye poke, I am a believer, unless the referee is calling for a break in the action, it is a live fight and you should be treated as such. So that just grinded my gears. I don't like that, okay? Fight through it. Maybe at the end of the round, get your corner to call out the ref and go, hey, ref, fucking put your glasses on, you're missing shit. But you can't be doing that. I mean, I will always touch on boxing. It's what I know. But you go to Floyd Mayweather versus Victor Ortiz, okay? There was a legal blow by one of the fighters. I think it was Mayweather. Okay, they touch gloves. The ref stops the action. Okay, goes, you can't do this shit anymore, boys. Touch gloves and let's fight. And he goes, let's fight. And Ortiz goes to shake Mayweather's hands again as a sign of, good faith. So what does Mayweather do? He gives him a 1-2 and knocks him out cold. Okay? And everyone's like, oh, that's controversial. You shouldn't have done it. No, he should do it, okay? Once the ref says the fight's back on, the fight's back on. Don't go and try and shake his hand, okay? You're not in there to make friends. Fight, because it's a live fight, and Floyd did it and knocked him out, okay? So just don't bother with this shit, all right? Look, it's going to be heated. It's going to be heated, and I can't even talk properly because it does grind my gears. I hate in any combat sports where you're looking to the ref to save you, and then I hate when the ref goes, oh yeah, I'll give you a break now that you've told me what's happened, okay? The ref should be good enough at his job to see what happens and stop it then and there, and then move on with the fight. So I gave the first round to Fiziev after all that. So we move into the second. And Gaethje's corner obviously gave him the right advice because he eventually started to time Fiziev. And like I said, to begin it, timing beats speed. And he was getting the better of every exchange with Fiziev. Fiziev was coming flying in with these punches, and Gaethje was just landing either the counter hooks, just jabbing him on his way in, and whatever, the uppercuts as well. There was some, especially in round 3, I'm getting ahead of myself again, but the uppercuts coming from Gaethje were brutal, everyone. Those were some crisp, clean uppercuts. And you know what? He starts to mark up Fiziev something fierce. This ended up looking like a slasher film by the end of it. Okay? Fiziev looked fucked, everyone. He looked fucked. I'm sorry. I try not to swear too much on our recordings here anymore, but he looked fucked, everyone. Those eyes were closing up on him. The cuts were bleeding furiously. Is that a word for bleeding hard? I don't even know. But Gaethje, he was showing the experience. He was showing why he's a former world champion. And I thought Fiziev, he should win this fight from the first round. He's a rising star. The skill set he had, or the strengths he has in his skill set, were phenomenal. But he didn't know what to do, okay? Once he started getting countered, all he could do was rush in with his punches and his kicks, and Gaethje was copping him, getting the better of every exchange. But it's like I said, it's not like I'm trying to say these fights are domination by any fighter other than the Gunnar Nelson fight. That was clearly domination. This, everyone, if you get a chance, this was an absolute war by two warriors. This is a 5-star fight, everyone. Okay? If I was David Meltzer, I'd give it 7 stars because that's what he does. This was as good as it comes, in my opinion, okay? The rising star versus the former champion who's a vet. Like I said, it was a war, everyone. They were each copping it quite hard from each other. But Gaethje winning the exchanges and doing the more damage against Fiziev is what I believe wins him this fight. But you've got to watch this. This was an incredible back and forth exchange between each fighter that ended up just being an extremely, extremely entertaining affair. And I'll also add, Gaethje's a funny guy, eh? that post-fight interview, that had me popping quite a lot, okay? He gets at least one takedown in the fight. Obviously, people have been calling for him to use some takedowns. So he gets the takedown in round 3, wins the fight. No thanks to that. That's not how he wins the fight. He does it like the end of round 3. And he's like, I got my takedown now, so you can all shut the fuck up. And I just lost it. That's hilarious. And then he's like, no, wait, not you fans. I love all you. The critics, they can shut up. Oh, man, it popped me. He's a funny guy. Okay, so that was my fight of the night, everyone. The next fight, not that was any wasn't good. That was also a barn burner. But this was a war, everyone. This was two guys going at it. Once again, just a total striking affair. Other than that one takedown, it was all fought in a standing position. What's the word? Never mind. They were exchanging big bombs against each other. They were throwing bombs. It was brilliant. It is exactly what you want to see from any combat sport. I recommend you all go check out that fight, or at least the fight highlights from that fight. So we'll move on. So the reason we're all here, the reason I personally watched this card, Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards 3, the rubber match. Now, if you haven't seen the second fight between these two fighters, you need to go check out the highlights to that as well, okay? Because that sets up this whole match, okay? That second fight between Usman versus Edwards has one of the greatest, out of nowhere, unexpected finishes I've ever seen in the UFC, okay? Usman was winning basically every second of their second fight. He won basically every second of their first fight as well, which is also important to what happens in his third fight. So he wins the first fight, and he's basically winning every moment of the second fight. You get to the fifth round. You had the commentators in that particular fight writing his obituary, writing Edwards' obituary. They're like, he's dejected. He's just accepting the decision loss, blah, blah, blah. He ain't doing anything. Then out of nowhere, I think there's like less than 30 seconds left, he connects with this massive head kick to Usman and knocks him out cold. He's out cold before he even hits the ground. He doesn't even need to follow up with some ground and pound. He walks away. He turns his back. He knows he's out cold. And the ref's like, yeah, this is over. All right. You don't really see that often in the UFC. Normally the guy jumps on top and gives him a few punches before the ref's like, okay, he's out. Edwards knew he was out. That was a wild, wild finish. So, and this is all important, like I've said, because you had Usman winning the first fight, you had him winning most of the second fight, and now it's a rubber match. Now, logic should dictate that Usman is the better fighter, and that maybe it was just a lapse of judgment, maybe he took his foot off the gas, whatever the case was, maybe it was a fluke. And that's what I personally believed. It was maybe a fluke that Edwards landed this kick, because Usman overall has shown he's a better fighter. Now, their first fight came in, I think, 2015, so it has been 8 years. But let's not worry too much about it. Let's focus on the second fight, which was only like last year. If you're dominating that much of the fight and you've been caught cold, something like Lennox Lewis had that happen to him a few times. I believe the better fighter should be Usman, and he will win the rematch because he knows just to not get kicked in the head again. Easier said than done, but don't take your foot off the gas, don't have that lapse in judgment, and the fight should be yours. But I actually think that played a big part into why Leon Edwards ends up repeating and retaining his belt here tonight. Because his kicks were the story of the entire fight. And I think the fact that he was knocked out by a kick, Usman was knocked out by a kick, it stayed with him, okay? He couldn't shake it. That was at the back of his mind the entire fight. He was clearly not wanting that to be it happened to him again. So what did Edwards do? And he was very clever in doing this. He just threw leg kicks and body kicks the entire fight. Usman not wanting to get kicked in the head again was only guarding the head for a lot of these. So Edwards ends up connecting on over 70% of these kicks. The accuracy was insane. And apparently Usman doesn't have the best knees. So when you're targeting a weakness of your opponent and you're landing that many kicks, I think he landed like 40 leg kicks or something ridiculous across the entire fight. You're wearing him down. The body kicks take the air out of you. Usman was clearly concerned about the head kick guarding up there. So in my opinion, the kicks were the story of the fight, and that's why I believe Edwards picks up this unanimous decision win, or sorry, majority decision win. We'll get to why it's majority decision in a second. So for the first round, I gave it to Edwards. I gave Edwards the first round. I thought that was just an incredible example of reading your opponent, so to speak. Well, no, not so to speak. He was. He knew what Usman was scared of, and he fought a great game plan from the get-go, mixing in the kicks to the leg and to the body, and he doing the occasional strike with his fists, but for the most part, it was all about the kicks. So I gave the first round to Edwards. So we move on to the second. Now, this is where Usman started to use his strengths in the ring, okay? He did basically zero wrestling in the first round. He started wrestling in the second round. And I've spoken before how important wrestling is in the UFC, and Usman's a great wrestler, okay? So he starts mixing in these takedowns against Edwards, okay? And that's not where Edwards wants to be, because when Usman had him in the clinch or he had him on the floor, he was peppering him with punches, okay? And that's what you need to do. I don't want to see these people just lay on each other, ground and pound, and that's what Usman was doing. And a lot of it went, these weren't the hardest shots, okay? When you're that close to someone, you can't wind up as much and hit as hard as you need to. But it doesn't matter. If you're peppering away with little hooks to the body, which Usman was doing, I think that was enough for Usman to win the second round. I know a few people didn't give him the second round, but I also know scoring for this fight was all over the shop for fans, especially the ones tweeting in that we saw in the fight. I personally give the second round to Usman, okay? Purely because of the wrestling that he started to employ in that round. That being said, though, it wasn't like this was just Usman wrestling. The kicks kept on coming from Edwards. The kicks never stopped coming from Edwards. He kept taking out Usman's legs. If you got no legs, you can't fight, okay? And Edwards was doing that, and he was doing it superbly. But not only was it the kicks from Edwards, this is when he started mixing in the knees. And I think the best strike of that round came from a very, very hard knee to Usman, okay? But despite that, despite the knee, despite the kicks, I do give this round to Kamaru, okay? So we're going into the third now, everyone. And now it's a tied fight. It's 1-1 or 19-19. And this is where we start to have a little controversy, okay? Edwards was clearly doing whatever he could to pull out this win. And that included being a little dirty, okay? And starting to use illegal tactics. I can't remember if it was the second or third round, but during the clinch, he's grabbing and like pulling against Kamaru's glove. Basically, he's trying to keep Kamaru from taking him down. And to do that, you need to keep his hands off you and from them wrapping around and connecting. Now, it's hard to hold on to someone's wrist. You can slip out. You know what's not hard to hold on to? If you just grab their glove, okay? There's a lot to grab onto there. So he's doing what he needs to do to stop being taken down. So the ref, I think it was Herb Dean, gives him a hard, stern warning for that, but he doesn't take the point there. But then in this third round, Kamaru is still employing a great wrestling game and goes to take him down again. They're up against the cage, and there's a clear cage holding by Edwards. He's just wrapped his fingers around the cage so he can't be taken down. Now, that's apparently a big no-no in the MMA or in the UFC because Herb Dean immediately deducts a point from him for that. Now, that's huge in a fight like this. If we're tied going into round 3 and you've just lost a point, that's basically losing the round almost, you know? Even if you do win the round, it's even. So then you'd go into the 4th round and it's still a tied fight. Okay? So that was big. That was just huge swing in momentum from at that point at least for Kamaru. But I don't care. You do what you got to do to win these fights. And if you need to be a bit dirty, I'm happy with it. It's only cheating if you get caught. He did get caught that time. He lost the point, but he didn't get taken to the ground. And then he was able to continue fighting on his feet and continue throwing out these kicks and continuing to pepper away at Usman. Now, you had the commentators say, shouldn't they continue on the ground? I mean, that seems like an odd way to do things anyway, in my opinion. But as another commentator said, you can't have it both ways. You can't have the point deducted from your opponent and continue on the ground. So they deduct the point and continued on their feet. And a point being deducted is huge, absolutely huge. So I'm happy with that. But it wasn't only the grabbing of the glove or the grabbing of the cage. He peppers in a few low blows here, Edwards, okay? He peppers in about 2 in round 3. And you could see the ref being like, oh, man, I want to take another point. I won't, because there'll be riots out in the streets of London or Wembley, or it was at the O2 Arena. England, riots out in England. So I won't do it. But he did. He connected on Kamaru's nuts like twice, hard, okay? Even if they aren't scoring kicks, you can't score a low blow. Any man out there, you know what it's like to get kicked in the nuts. That takes it out of you more than most punches or kicks anywhere on the body. You feel it in your gut. It hurts a lot. I don't even need to explain why it hurts a lot or even talk about it. So you do what you need to do, though. Okay, if that takes your opponent out of their rhythm, if that it hurts them and hurting them, wears them down, you do what you do. Okay, so he does land 2 very clean low blows right to Usman. But you know what pisses me off again? He looked to the ref and been like, he kicked me low. Can you give me a break? Get bloody fucked. Okay, fight on. Okay, don't do that shit. All right, stop complaining to the ref. All right, the ref will see it in the replays. You can let him know from the corner. But don't turn your face and look away from your opponent to look at the ref and be like, hey, man, he kicked me in the nuts. Because why doesn't Edwards just follow up with a flying drop kick to the face? I don't know why he didn't. I would have. All right, it's for the World Championship. I don't care if you hate me. I'll be a heel. All right, I love being the heel. Okay? A win's a win, everyone. But anyway, this has caused a bit of controversy, these illegal tactics. I've heard a few people, well, not heard a few people, I've read a few news reports after watching the fight. People saying it's dirty. I think Colby Covington, and we'll get to him in a bit, actually, saying there wasn't a legit win or some shit because of these moves. I don't even know if these low blows were intentional, okay? Sometimes you kick and you don't kick as high as you thought. They're moving away. You're targeting somewhere. They've moved elsewhere. And you've copped him in the nads. Shit happens, okay? But anyway, that was round 3. We had these illegal moves. You had the point deduction. You had Usman still landing some cracking elbows and some overhands and all that good stuff. But I still gave the round to Edwards because of these kicks. Now, that can be why it's controversial, because he wins the round because he didn't get taken down. He loses the point, but then gets a chance to throw these extra kicks and do enough, in my eyes, to win round 3. So we move on to the 4th. Okay. So we have a round 1. Look, this is all my opinion. Round 1 to Edwards. Round 2 to Kamaru. Round 3 a draw because of the point deduction. So we've still got a tied fight going into the 4th round, the championship rounds here in the UFC. So this is exciting stuff. This is still anyone's fight, okay? But in round 4, this is where Edwards makes the adjustment to the takedowns and the wrestling ability of Kamaru, which was extremely important because I didn't actually think Kamaru was doing anything else except trying to go for these takedowns. He had the occasional strike, the occasional elbow, but other than that, I didn't actually think he was doing anything to win these rounds. And that goes back to my original claim of why him winning the first 2 fights was important, because he dominated those rounds in the first 2 fights. But Edwards, he'd figured him out. And that's what happens when this is in any rubber match. you have so much experience going up against his opponent. And Edwards had kind of figured out Usman because he starts to snuff out these takedowns. Even when he does get taken down, there was nothing behind him. There weren't real hard falls to the ground. There was no follow-up strikes at all. And he's back on his feet within 15 seconds, okay? So if he's not snuffing out the takedown, they're basically worth nothing in my eyes anyway, because there was no follow-up. And he's getting back up anyway. So I think Edwards is winning the 4th round as well. But then you have all these people say, this is a close fight. These rounds can go either way. Who wins the 3rd? Who wins the 2nd? Who wins the 1st? I don't know. You had people winning, people saying Kamaru was winning at that point on the little Twitter things that come up. People were saying that Edwards was winning on the Twitter things that came up. I didn't understand that at all. I thought this was a clear domination by Edwards, round in, round out. If he didn't lose a point in the 3rd round, he'd be up a round against him. I ended up giving the 4th round to Edwards as well, because once he started stuffing the takedowns or snuffing them out, the takedowns of Usman, like I said, there was nothing really he was doing to win any of these rounds, and that continued here into round 5. Edwards just kept on throwing these beautiful kicks in every round, and they kept connecting clean every time. It was the story of the fight. So when the commentators in round 5 were saying this is another close round, even though Edwards is landing the cleaner shots and defending the takedowns, so how is it close? I can't understand it. If you're landing the cleaner shots and you're defending your opponent's offense, it shouldn't be a close round, and I don't think they were. I thought Edwards was doing more than enough to win all of these rounds, except the 2nd, which was the only time Kamaru was able to wrestle effectively and take him down a couple of times, and then at least follow up the takedowns with some sort of offense. So Leon Edwards wins by the unanimous decision. Well, sorry, majority decision, because one of the scorecards ends up being tied because of the point deduction. If it wasn't point deducted, he would have won on that card as well. But that implies it was a close fight, regardless, which I just don't see. I really don't see. I think Edwards has figured out Kamaru. I don't know if he was tentative because of the knockout. Sometimes a knockout breaks a fighter. They just don't recover. They're scared almost. I'm not saying he is scared. You just don't want to have that happen again. Whatever the case may be, he's figured him out, and he won clean in my books. Clean, despite the illegal tactics. I don't give a shit about that. I think that's fine. Okay? He did what he needed to do to win the fight. So that's my review of UFC 286. The only thing I do have to add, because I do agree with what Edwards said, basically they're pushing for Colby Covington to be the next fighter against Edwards. And as he said, he hasn't fought in 18 months. Okay, and he just gets to slide right into a title shot. There are other people in the division fighting their asses off for a shot at a title. And you're just going to be able to just walk your way into it? No, I don't like that. Not at all. Okay? I don't know a lot about the sport, but it's not like you John Jones coming back, okay? I know John Jones is a GOAT. He at least gets a chance at a title shot no matter what. Okay, but there are other people in the division who work their butt off and who have been going through some wars that deserve these chances. Okay, I don't think he deserves a chance, but it'll probably happen. So I'll watch that and review that as well. So you've been here tonight with your boy Hogsley. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good shit, and we will see you down the road.
Network, that's the way we play. Good God Almighty. Network, that's the way we play. Get puppies. Network, that's the way we play. Get.
The following announcement has been paid for by the WZWA Network.